Imagine this. You wake up feeling nauseous, maybe from a long flight, a rough night, or just one of those mornings where your stomach simply refuses to cooperate. Someone hands you a warm cup of ginger tea, and within minutes, that queasy, heavy feeling starts to ease. It sounds almost too simple, right? But here's what makes ginger so fascinating. A 2024 meta-analysis published in the journal Nutrients reviewed over 30 clinical trials and found that ginger significantly reduced nausea symptoms across multiple populations, including pregnant women, chemotherapy patients, and post-surgery patients. That is not a folktale. That is peer-reviewed science, replicated across continents and decades. Life can be busy, right? And when your gut is acting up, most people reach for the nearest remedy without thinking twice. But ginger has been earning its reputation for thousands of years, and modern research is finally catching up to explain exactly why this small, knobby root has such a powerful effect on the human body. Ginger, Zingiber officinale, is a flowering plant whose root has been used in culinary and medicinal traditions across Asia, the Middle East, and Africa for over 4,000 years. What gives it that distinctive, sharp, warming, almost peppery flavor are bioactive compounds called gingerols and shogaols. These are not just flavor molecules. They interact with serotonin receptors in the gut. They suppress inflammatory pathways at the cellular level, and they influence how quickly food moves through your digestive system. The National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, or NCCIH, notes that ginger is one of the most extensively studied natural compounds in scientific literature, with a growing body of work examining its effects on digestion, inflammation, blood sugar, and cardiovascular markers. Nature packs a lot into one small root, but as with most things, balance matters, and understanding both sides of the story is what today is really about. Start with digestion because that's where ginger has some of its most compelling and well-documented effects. You don't have to be dealing with a chronic illness to feel the difference. Plenty of people notice ginger's digestive effect after simply sipping ginger tea before or after a meal. A 2023 NCBI meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials found that ginger supplementation accelerated gastric emptying, meaning it helped food move from the stomach into the small intestine more efficiently. For people who experience chronic indigestion, uncomfortable bloating after meals, or the heavy, sluggish feeling that lingers long after eating, this mechanism is genuinely significant. The gingerols appear to stimulate the migrating motor complex, a wave-like muscular pattern in the gut that keeps digestive contents moving during fasting periods and between meals. Harvard's T.H. Chan School of Public Health highlights ginger's long-standing traditional role in digestive health and acknowledges the emerging clinical support now backing those traditional uses. That said, this same motility-enhancing effect can be a double-edged situation for some people. For individuals with already sensitive digestive systems, irritable bowel syndrome, gastritis, or acid reflux, speeding up gastric emptying can sometimes cause cramping, loose stools, or abdominal discomfort. Studies show that doses above 4 grams per day are more consistently associated with gastrointestinal side effects, even in otherwise healthy adults. The anti-nausea properties of ginger are arguably its most studied and cited benefit, and the evidence here is notably strong. The 2024 meta-analysis referenced earlier, alongside a large 2023 Cochrane review, both concluded that ginger was meaningfully more effective than placebo in reducing nausea and vomiting, particularly in pregnancy-related nausea, commonly called morning sickness, and in chemotherapy-induced nausea. The proposed mechanism involves ginger's interaction with 5-HT3 receptors, the same receptors targeted by many pharmaceutical anti-nausea drugs, which helps quiet the nausea signals traveling from the gut to the brain. The NCCIH acknowledges this research as promising, but also notes something clinically important. For people already taking blood thinners like warfarin or medications that affect platelet function, ginger's natural anticoagulant properties may amplify bleeding risk in ways that are not always predictable.
Studies published on NCBI between 2023 and 2025 have flagged this interaction, especially at higher supplemental doses rather than culinary amounts. So, while the nausea data is genuinely encouraging across multiple populations, individual context, especially medication history and existing conditions, matters enormously. Ginger's anti-inflammatory properties represent another area drawing serious and sustained scientific attention. Gingerols and shogaols inhibit the production of prostaglandins and leukotrienes, which are signaling molecules that sit at the center of the body's inflammatory response. A 2023 meta-analysis published in Phytotherapy Research found that ginger supplementation produced measurable reductions in key inflammatory markers, including C-reactive protein, or CRP, and interleukin-6 in adults managing chronic inflammatory conditions like osteoarthritis.
These findings are consistent with earlier Harvard nutrition source analyses, noting ginger's potential role in modulating inflammation without the long-term side effect profile associated with regular NSAID use. But nuance is essential here. The doses used in many of these studies, typically between 1 and 3 grams of standardized ginger extract daily, are substantially higher than what you would realistically consume by adding ginger to food. And concentrated ginger supplements, particularly in capsule or powder form, have been linked in some NCBI case reports to stomach irritation, esophageal discomfort, and in certain cases, heartburn that worsens with consistent use over time. The stomach lining, for all its resilience, can react sensitively to potent compounds, especially when taken on an empty stomach or in large amounts over extended periods. Blood sugar regulation is an emerging and genuinely exciting area in ginger research that has attracted considerable interest from metabolic health researchers. A 2024 systematic review published via NCBI examined 18 randomized controlled trials and found that ginger supplementation was associated with modest but statistically significant reductions in fasting blood glucose and HbA1c levels, a long-term marker of blood sugar control, in adults living with type 2 diabetes. The proposed mechanism centers on ginger's ability to enhance insulin sensitivity and increase glucose uptake into muscle cells by activating certain enzyme pathways involved in carbohydrate metabolism. The Harvard nutrition source points to these findings as genuinely intriguing, though researchers consistently and carefully note that ginger alone is not a treatment for diabetes, and the effect sizes, while real and reproducible, are relatively modest when compared to pharmaceutical interventions designed specifically for blood sugar management. The risk consideration here is subtle but worth understanding. For people already prescribed diabetes medications, adding high-dose ginger supplements could potentially amplify blood sugar-lowering effects to the point of hypoglycemia, abnormally low blood sugar, particularly during periods of reduced food intake or increased physical activity. The NCCIH includes this interaction as an area where open conversation with a healthcare provider is especially important before making changes. There is also growing but still early-stage evidence around ginger and cardiovascular health. Several NCBI studies published between 2023 and 2025 have examined ginger's effect on blood pressure, LDL cholesterol, triglycerides, and platelet aggregation, the process by which blood cells clump together and contribute to clot formation. A 2024 review found modest reductions in LDL cholesterol and triglyceride levels among individuals supplementing with ginger over periods of 8 to 12 weeks. The antiplatelet effect, ginger's ability to mildly thin the blood by reducing platelet stickiness, is simultaneously viewed as potentially beneficial for cardiovascular health in some populations and as a meaningful risk factor for people with clotting disorders, those approaching surgery, or individuals already taking anticoagulant medications.
This dual nature is well documented across multiple NCBI publications and illustrates precisely why ginger is such a compelling and genuinely complex subject. The same compound doing protective work in one physiological system is creating real and documented considerations in another. Fruits, vegetables, herbs, they are tools, not miracles. And the more specific, rigorous, and honest the science gets, the more useful those tools become. Not because they are perfect, but because understanding their real effects helps you make genuinely informed choices rather than chasing headlines. Ginger is a remarkable and instructive example of how a single natural compound can carry both significant potential benefits and real, documented risks that are entirely dependent on the individual, the dose, the form, and the broader health context. The science around ginger's role in digestion, nausea, inflammation, blood sugar, and cardiovascular markers is substantial and continuing to grow. And so too is the science around who needs to approach ginger more carefully, and in what form, and how much. Studies show what ginger can do under controlled conditions, and they also show that no root, no supplement, and no so-called superfood exists in isolation from the wider picture of a person's health. Variety, balance, and individualized understanding are what keep nutrition both safe and genuinely meaningful in everyday life. Understanding a plant this well-researched is itself a kind of power. It moves the conversation from, is ginger good or bad, to something far more useful. What does ginger actually do? For whom, and under what circumstances? That is the kind of knowledge that genuinely serves you. If today's deep dive into ginger science surprised you in any way, drop a comment below. Which benefit or risk caught your attention most? Give this video a like if the research breakdown was helpful, and subscribe for weekly evidence-based looks at the plants, fruits, and vegetables that shape our diets and our health. Links to the Harvard nutrition source, NCCIH, and the specific NCBI meta-analyses referenced today are all in the description so you can explore the full studies yourself. This video uses AI-generated audio and visuals for educational purposes only, not medical advice. Consult a doctor before changing your diet, especially if you have health conditions or take medications.